يعني فكه من همسيتي ولا هي تبي الحكه بالحشو زين امي جاءت قبة صفرة ومتروس انجليز القفل الله والمفتاح حديد شنو حبيبي ساعدناكم بقدر الاستطاعة وليدي الله يحفظك وين خالد هاني يلا يا هلا والله يعني وردة زايدة بالنفس حلوة بسم الله عليك شمعة بس حبيبتي العمر كله أمي كم وزنك؟ كم طولك؟ زين ما شاء الله عليك يعني محافظة ما يخالف أمي سكري منك أنتي طيحت لك الكاوكاو طول عمرك ما في رياضة وكلها في شكل صح صح لا مو أمرنا حبيبتي أنت اللي ما تعتني بنفسك حبيبتي صح وين رايحة بعد؟ من وين؟ شو وانت شكو ولا طالعة رايحة مجتمعات؟ أسي عليك نحكي أسي عليك الجوع سؤالتي يقول كم المثل التالي الجمل ما يشوف يشوف معقولة؟ شنو كان اللبس اللي قبل؟ شلون تبي تحلها وانت معذبة مرة ثانية؟ وين خالد هاني؟
At the centre of this sort of hoax chase. No one needs to chase that wild boar, just lives in the forest, and that's that.
So at the moment, the police operations stopped, but they're still analyzing a couple of things. They're analyzing hairs, feces they found in the forest, so they still look at that. But at the moment, people can leave their houses again. The kindergarten was open yesterday, but the children were meant to stay inside, but life in that area got a bit back to normality. So it's also school holidays here, so families want to go with their children outside. Exactly. And we have the summertime here, so everyone wants to go outside. And now this is possible again. So the police said the area is safe. You can go outside. In the background, there will be some analysis, but I think at the moment, for everyone, it's clear. Yeah, this line, this story was a bit crazy, and we're all happy it's just a ball.
I can imagine. Vivian Bowman, reporter for NTV and RTL in Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us. James Reynolds with you on OS on the BBC World Service. Well, wherever you look around the world, wherever music is played, there might be this story. People on social media and elsewhere have been paying tribute to the legendary American pop and jazz musician Tony Bennett, who's died at the age of 96, who defined the sound for so many years. On social media, the Star Trek actor George Takei posted, "Tony Bennett was the last of his kind, a master of the American songbook." Musician Nile Rodgers added, "My most heartfelt condolences go out to Tony Bennett's family and friends." Former US First Lady Hillary Clinton has tweeted, "A true talent, a true gentleman, and a true friend." 1951, Bennett had his first big hit with Because of You. He carried on for decades and decades. In 2021, Love for Sale, his second album of duets with Lady Gaga, followed it to the top of the charts. He was the oldest man to have a #1 album in the United States, and in a 7-decade-long career sold more than 50 million records worldwide. He won 2 Emmys and, count them, 20 Grammys. But perhaps the greatest compliment came from none other than Frank Sinatra, who died in 1998. Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, said simply, is the best singer in the business. He excites me when I watch him. He moves me. He's the singer who gets across what the composer has in mind and probably a little more. Tony Bennett was born in 1926. He grew up in poverty in the Queens district of New York. His father was an Italian immigrant. He believed that his talent was inherited and that his father's early death pushed him to succeed. The legend in my family, he said, was that my father used to stand at the top of a mountain and the whole valley would hear him sing. That, Tony Bennett concluded, is the reason that I am singing. He's died at the age of 96. We want to leave you with his song.
Love is funny or it's sad. It's quiet or it's mad. It's a good thing or it's bad.
This is the BBC World Service talking about teenagers.
It is, to me, the most fascinating period in human development.
Join me, Ella Al-Shamahi, and a panel of experts as we discuss the big evolutionary questions about teenagers.
When you're trying to acquire the skills you need to function independently, that makes adolescence more responsive to stress.
Are today's teens dealing with extra psychological challenges?
I'm going to maybe take you back beyond the ancient philosophers.
Adolescents don't have the same coping skills that adults do.
Is risk-taking something that's an important part of growth?
Cross-culturally, there's quite a lot of variation in the experience of adolescents.
They are orienting themselves in a world that they haven't created.
The Forum, the evolution of teenagers. Saturday at 11 GMT.
Hello, this is James Reynolds, live in the BBC's newsroom in central London, and welcome to OS. My colleagues have got my other colleague, James Cotnell, up on the line from southern Italy. In a few minutes, we'll bring him onto the programme to talk about migration. At this time of year, many thousands of migrants from sub-Saharan African countries and elsewhere make the risky journey from North Africa across the Mediterranean towards Europe. James will bring us up to date on the scene in southern Italy.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. A prominent ultranationalist Russian military blogger, Igor Girkin, has been detained in Moscow. The FSB had asked for him to be held on extremism charges. Girkin had recently called Vladimir Putin a non-entity and a cowardly waste of space. A date in May next year has been set for the start of Donald Trump's trial on charges of mishandling classified documents. It falls in the middle of the Republican presidential primary elections. Mr. Trump, who's seeking the nomination, denies wrongdoing. Legendary American singer Tony Bennett has died aged 96. He put his enduring success down to his 1962 hit, I Left My Heart in San Francisco. His career spanned 7 decades. Women in the Indian state of Manipur have attacked the home of the main suspect in a sexual assault that sparked a national outcry. Footage emerged yesterday of 2 women being paraded naked in Manipur and attacked by a mob. Hundreds of Air Force reservists in Israel have said they'll suspend their service if the government pursues its plans to overhaul the judiciary. There have been weeks of public protests about the legislation. Medical charity MSF says it's considering suspending its operations in a hospital in the Sudanese capital Khartoum after several incidents targeting its staff. The clinic is one of only 2 still operating in the south of the city. Scholars at a prestigious Islamic college in Iran have criticized the return of the morality police to enforce the mandatory hijab for women. They described it as an illegal and failed policy. And Sri Lanka and India are to investigate laying a pipeline across the sea strait between them. On a visit to Delhi, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, said a petrol pipeline would ensure his country had a reliable and affordable supply of energy. And that's the latest BBC News.
James Ripples with you on OS on the BBC World Service, live from our newsroom here in central London, where a number of the screens in front of me are showing various summer sporting events. There's cricket between England and Australia, the Open Golf. Wimbledon's finished now, so I need to find something else to look at. But colleagues around me here are working on a number of international stories. Several of them are working on obituaries for the legendary US singer Tony Bennett, who, as we reported a few minutes ago, has died at the age of 96. Provoking a wave of tributes from around the world. We want to turn our attention in this part of the programme, though, to the numbers of people making the risky journey across the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. Those numbers have increased considerably this year. In my time as Italy correspondent between 2014 and 2019, I spent a lot of time in southern Italy, in Sicily, watching migrants arrive and occasionally reporting on hundreds of migrant drownings. It is one of the most dangerous journeys in the world. What is it like then for refugees and migrants in Italy who make it onshore, who make it to Italian territory? Italians themselves react. My colleagues James Coppell and Mimi Swaby have been sent to southern Italy and have been meeting people for the last 6 days who've made these journeys. And James is up on the line with us now. Do set the scene. Where are you and what have you been doing?
Hi James, look, we're in the smallish town of Siderno in Calabria. If you think of Italy as a giant boot kicking Sicily, the island of Sicily, well, Calabria and Siderno in particular is the toe of that boot, almost right down at the bottom of Italy. And it's places like this where people arrive from across the Mediterranean Sea after those incredibly dangerous journeys you've been talking about. So we've been travelling all over the region, really. Reggio Calabria, right across the water from Sicily. You can see Sicily just across the short strait, to Crotone, other places, Camini, a small village up in the hills, seeing the sorts of impact the arrival of migrants have had on Italian towns and villages, and seeing too the impact this sort of journey has had on those migrants, the ones, as you say, who make it.
Where did they begin their journeys, James?
A large number of places, really, and it depends a little bit on which migratory route we're talking about here. So you do see people who have taken a boat from Turkey, and they might be Syrians or Afghans, Bangladeshis too, coming along that route quite a lot, and their boat will have travelled past the coast of Greece and landed somewhere in Italy. And there are two other very, very common routes a bit further around to the west, so up from Libya and up from Tunisia. Not necessarily those Tunisians and Libyans making that journey, though there are some of them, but people from sub-Saharan Africa, from West Africa, or the Horn of Africa, sometimes down as far as Central Africa, who've made very, very difficult, time-consuming, often deadly journeys for some of their colleagues across the desert up until Tunisia, Libya, and then that equally dangerous journey across the sea to southern Italy.
And you described the different people making different journeys from different starting points, but from those you've been able to speak to, why did they leave?
It depends an awful lot. Some, it was simply a case of, I'm struggling. I can't see a way to make a living in this country. This is a poor country. I can see Europe, Italy on TV screens. I can see the sort of quality of life people have there. I know people in my family who've got there who are sending back money to us here in, say, Sierra Leone, and I feel like I could make a better life in Europe. Some in their countries. There's many reasons almost are migrants, and there are tens of thousands of them making this journey, hundreds of thousands of them making these sorts of journeys every year. When we're on air at the service, we got a message in from someone who sends us messages quite a lot, James Rumajo, and he said, great that you're talking about migration. Someone I know, a close relative, has just recently got to Italy, made it to Italy, and we wanted to find out a little bit more about his journey. So we got in touch with James's relative, and he sent us a WhatsApp note.
from Novel. I'm from Southern Sudanese. Seeing when I was in South Sudan, I planned to move away from the country. So compare our life, the one of South Sudan and the one of Libya, is something different. We are just thinking for our brothers, our sisters, our daughters, our sons, which remain in South Sudan, because Sudan is not also there's people are dying of the West in the country, so there is no place who is safe in South Sudan, whether you are in Juba, whether you are in Eastern Equatoria. So all the South Sudan there is insecurity. That is why the people run away from the country. So when you go to Sudan also the same thing. Yeah? I went to Sudan and the fighting will start from there. So actually we do appreciate that we are here in Europe. At least we pray for those who are remaining there.
We heard something about some of the conditions that people are leaving there, but more widely, James Cocknell, what kind of conditions are people having to leave?
Well, in some cases, very, very difficult conditions, lives of poverty. You hear a lot from migrants about simply the difficulty of making ends meet, the prospect of greater riches along the way. And yet, of course, everyone who makes this kind of journey will have had to find money, sometimes quite a lot of money, and cost $1,000 or more to pay people smugglers to take you through the desert, to find a way onto one of those dangerous boats across the Mediterranean. So money will have to be found in some way, however poor people are. And there are plenty of cases people have told us about of family members contributing to get them onto that bus across the or car across the desert onto that boat. Whole villages almost contributing to get people to this dangerous route to across the Mediterranean. There's one case in the news this week in Senegal where 13 people from the same place had died on a boat as they made it across the Mediterranean. They'd set off together. The community had pooled resources, I think, to help them get to Europe. And in that case, it didn't work out.
So people are leaving these countries, the ones that you've described, and James, you've worked in a lot of these countries, bring that huge understanding to our audience. Then, before getting to Italy, there is that intermediate stop in North Africa. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so I lived in Sudan for many years, for example, and there's always been conflicts in Sudan, whether that's the war, what is now South Sudan, before independence, or conflict in Darfur in the west of the country, Nuba Mountains and Blue Nile, always conflict in some form or other in Sudan every day, really, for the last 30 years and more. So people have always left a place like Sudan to look for shelter. And in many cases, they go to neighboring countries. But increasingly, over the last decade or so, people have been coming north to Europe. And that is accelerating right now, to take the Sudanese example, because of the conflict there of the last 3 months, the really bitter and brutal civil war. So people are fleeing over the border into Chad. And then they will start making that journey up into North Africa. Now, people smuggling is a big problem in places like Tunisia and Libya. Conditions people are facing there extremely difficult. Lots of accounts I've heard this week of abuses and torture and so on. And outside a really large reception centre for migrants in the town of Cotonou, I met a woman who said she was from Ivory Coast. She told me her name was Anisette, and she explained what she had experienced in Tunisia.
When you arrive in Tunisia, you work like slaves. You're in the house, you don't go out. Often there are rapes and bad treatment, and you're hit. So things weren't going well, and we decided to leave Tunisia to come to Italy.
You used the word slave or slaves. Is that your situation?
That was my situation. When I got to Tunisia, some black brothers sold me into the hands of the Tunisians. And so that's how I ended up in that house. I couldn't go out, and everything was locked like a prison. And I worked for no salary, and it was really strange. When they started really mistreating black people in Tunisia, the man of the house helped me. They sent me to the town of Sfax, and I got a boat from there to here.
And the boat journey from Sfax to Italy, was that okay? Was that difficult?
It was very difficult. There were lots of deaths. I only made it through God's grace. Our boat sank in Italian waters, and the Italian Red Cross came to pick up the survivors. Others died, and I knew a lot of people on that boat.
It is always worth pausing just to take in some of the testimony, James, that you collected there of a woman who made that journey, who saw many deaths along the way, and who was able to speak to you. That sea journey then from North Africa, where they endured terrible conditions, towards Europe, towards Italy, where you are occasionally, towards Malta. What are the boats like? How long is that journey?
It can be several days, 4 or 5 days in some cases. I think a lot depends on the size of the boat, the ability of the people on board it to direct it in the place towards the place they want to go. Sometimes it's almost a case of drifting with the current, or there are people who don't have the qualities, the skills to take the boat exactly where they want it to go. Some of these are very, very small, rickety vessels. I think in some cases, that Senegalese example I talked about a few minutes ago is a pirogue, a wooden canoe that, in that case, they were taking from Morocco towards the Canary Islands, which is Spanish territory. That's another migratory route that we haven't even really touched on yet. But yeah, it can be a very small boat. We talked to some Egyptians in Rochella, just down the coast, in a centre for migrants. Only 7 of them had arrived on a boat. That was about a week ago. And to take another example, it can be a much, much larger boat, very crowded with people, in some cases hundreds of people on board a boat. And then when you do have a tragedy, you can have dozens or even hundreds of people who die in a day. I mean, one of the stories that has really stuck with me from this week was hearing about a shipwreck of Kuchel, near Cotonou, so 2 or 3 hours drive from where we are today, and almost 100 people, 100 bodies were found after this disaster in February of this year. Something that had political ramifications too, because of the new Italian government's desire to cut down on migration, its hardline policy. It came in for criticism after a tragedy like this. But 7 of those bodies had been at sea for so long that it simply wasn't possible to identify them. And one of those was believed to be about a 6-month-old baby boy. We didn't know his name. He's buried in an unmarked grave, essentially, with a code on the gravestone identifying him rather than the name.
I remember going to funerals in 2015 in Malta, not far from Italy, and seeing the coffins with numbers on them. They were the bodies that had been recovered, and James, so many of those bodies had never been recovered. They were people who drowned without names in the Mediterranean. But for those who do manage that incredibly dangerous journey, who get to Italy, what happens when they get on land?
Well, initially they're taken to a reception centre as sort of check to see what kind of condition they are, if they need medical care, for example, because some will have suffered from lack of food and water on the journey. Some will have physical or psychological scars because of what they might have experienced in the sea, or perhaps in places like Tunisia and Libya, or in the conflict that they might have fled. There will be a sort of legal process to navigate if people want to apply for asylum, which is one possibility. Others will simply say, no, I'm here, I'm not a refugee, but I want to travel on to somewhere like Belgium, for example, we've heard, or Germany seem to be a popular destination. France, people may have relatives and they will simply try to leave Italy as quickly as possible. And people will be then in some sort of reception centre for some period of time, and then some will be able to settle into life in Italy, or receive Italian lessons and access to some sort of benefits and services, to a couple who are getting financial aid and help for their child as well, for which they felt very grateful to the Italian state. And so some will eventually start to make a new life here in Italy.
And for those who try to make that new life, who learn Italian, who do their best to fit in, what is life like for them?
One thing that really struck me was Camino, which is a small village up in the hills above the coast, not too far from where we are here. And over the last 10 years or so, the town has been, village I should say, just a few hundred people, but completely transformed. 1 out of 3 people there are refugees or projects there, people to work in, earn a living at a cafe, or selling things in a small shop weaving to make the things for that shop or the building trade. And it seems to be a village where Italians from Cameroon had left and are coming back because the school is full, because there are migrant children there, because there's a sense of a village being reborn, was how one. Hassan Cosmo, one from Senegal, one from Italy. And I spoke to them on the building site they were working on together.
My name is Azam. I'm from Senegal. I came here in 2014, 18 July.
Oh, you remember the day, the exact day?
I remember.
And how do people react to you? I guess they're used to seeing foreigners and refugees and migrants here, but when they see you in the streets of Paris, how do they react to you?
Me and them like brother. All of them. They're my friends. I have a friends. For example, I have sisters. I have a dads and moms. Yeah.
An Italian family.
Yeah, of course. Osman is my family.
Guzman. My name is Guzman Conte. Have you learnt any words of other languages with all these people living here?
Sicuramente non ero negli giusti. All those years, those 12 years, it wasn't possible for me to learn, of course, with all the work he's doing. But the thing that I've learned in all those years is humanity.
Interesting about what they've learned. And I remember in one of my trips to southern Italy, James, going to a very angry council meeting where there were Italians there who were extremely angry about the fact that there were young male migrants housed at a semi-disused hotel in their particular town, exposing some of the rifts, the divisions that were in Italian society at that time, and subsequently those who've taken a tougher line on migration, including Giorgia Meloni, have taken power, and Giorgia Meloni is now Prime Minister. And as we reflect on that, James, do tell us more about some of the people that you've been speaking to along with BBC Radio in the last few days.
Yeah, look, that point you make about the sort of division, not everybody happy with migrants is very clear. We saw, for example, racist graffiti in the town of Crotone, essentially saying, why are all these resources going to these migrants? What about us? What about poor people from Crotone? So that feeling is present. But I think if you ask about the people I spoke to, I think what struck out most for me by far is just simply how terrible, terrifying so many of these stories people have shared with me are the difficulties, the dangers of that life as a migrant, making that journey over the Mediterranean, perhaps through the desert before it, and the sort of lasting impact, even scars that can leave. I met Tessie, for example, a young Nigerian woman who came to Italy in 2008, and she told me why she had wanted to come here.
For a better life, for a better future. I came here when I was pretty young, let me say 20, 29. That's how I came here, through the both. It's terrifying. Looking back now, if I'm this age, I wouldn't have come because there is a lot of things that can go wrong. We see a lot of death. Those things remain in your brain. So it's a difficult thing to see at a young age.
When you set off, age 20, 21, were you aware of those sorts of things? Did you know it would be dangerous, or you just didn't?
Absolutely not. When we get to some point, I'm like, I want to go home. I can't go forward. I want to go on board. You can't really go back. Either you go forward or you remain there. But the place you remain in, like say for example Libya, there is not a place that you can stay. So you have to move forward, and there is no way you can go back. Everywhere is blocked.
Were you at least with friends or people you felt comfortable with?
Yes, because I came with my friend, my girlfriend. So we both, let's go back. We said, okay, we want to go back, or there's no means of going back.
And I imagine it's much harder as a young woman to travel than as a young man.
Very, 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 very hard. From my experience, it's very, very difficult. I can never advise anybody to take that route. Never, I can't. I'd rather you struggle where you are, and don't worry, you will make it. It takes time, yeah, but you will get there instead of risking your life. Because there are things that you will see during your journey. You have nightmare years to come.
That's your case.
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that. What gave you the strength to carry on?
Coming to Italy, I kind of like felt relief because the project I was living in Stinian, they were very, very helpful. They have a psychologist that will help you, that you can talk to. They have the assistant, which assistant worker, that they can help you with things. When I came here for 3 months, I couldn't come out. I was always sleep. I just wanted it to go that so that I can sleep. Just wake up, sleep, wake up. So now I kind of felt, yeah, that was depression, but I didn't know then. I was like, no way, what have I done? Because here I'm here in this land, I don't have anybody, no parents here, and the language I don't speak. So it was very difficult for the first 3 months. But with the help of the psychologist, the project that we were, I came out of that.
Did learning the language make a big difference for finding your feet here in Italy?
Yes, you have to learn the language. So I study here, so that helps me a lot. You can see I'm kind of proud of myself now because I went from not speaking the language to speaking the language and now working with other immigrants that are coming here.
And when you do first work with another immigrant, what do you say to them? What's the sort of conversation you have between them?
First of all, I say you have to have patience with yourself. Give yourself that grace that you just came out of somewhere that could have something that could have taken your life. So have patience with yourself and learn the language. The language is very, very important. If you have to make it here, the language, because if you have to work, you have to speak the language. So that's the one thing I always tell them. Go to school. Don't worry. I know it's difficult at first, but keep on pushing. You'll get there.
You're here now in Canini. Why? What's special about this language?
It reminds me of when I came. They give a lot of people the opportunity. So they give people like me opportunity. So when I started working here, I do tell the people that come here, like people that speak the language, the English, I say, take me as an example. Maybe someday it can be like me, okay? But take every opportunity given to you here. Don't take it for granted.
People pretending to take photos of you, friends of yours here.
Yeah, we are all friends.
Yeah. What was the biggest culture shock for you arriving in Italy? What did you think, wow, that's really different?
The language. And for the first month, I don't know the single thing they call cafe. We're only drinking the milk because that's the only thing I can say. Okay, milk, maybe they understand milk. But with any other thing, no, because when you say, I want some prepared, they're like, we don't understand you. So because the language is the shock.
There's also a very right-wing government in Italy now that doesn't want more migrants coming. Has that changed things, do you think, in people's attitudes or in the sort of rules people have to face?
Yes, that's the part that get more effect is about the documentation. Because without document, you can't really be secure. So that's the major problem we have here. You can't send people back home because they don't have documentation. Okay, but without document, you can't have any employment. So that's the most, I would say, most difficulty that they face.
And so if you did have to go back and advise your 20-year-old self, what would you say to her?
Now, I would say, well, you made the right choice because I made it through. But there are a lot of people. You say people say they have guilt. Yes, I have guilt that there are a lot of people that couldn't make it. But
Guilt that you made it and others didn't.
yes,
But it's not your fault, is it?
I know it's not my fault, but I'm not better than them. They were in the same struggle with me. They were trying to make it here, but they couldn't. Then why me? You know. So that's the guilt that sometimes you have to relieve, even though you try to like, thank God I made it, okay, I will live for them, but you still have that in the back of your mind that some people didn't make it.
So if I was to sum up your advice, it would be don't make the journey, but if you do, it might be okay.
I would say, I said I made it in my life, I'm working, I'm happy, but my 20-year-old self would have told myself back then, what did you do? This was not the plan. You were not supposed to come to this road then. But now we say, okay, you did great, you did nice, but I will not advise anybody to take the move. No, through the desert and say no because you don't know. It's 50-50.
If you live or die.
Yes, because you think, oh no, it's the desert. Maybe you have the car, you can go. Then when you see, no, it's not like that. Where you are in it, it's a different ball game. I spent 10 days in the desert. 10 days in the desert.
Did you have food, water?
At some point, the food, you run out of food and run out of water. And you will be at the point of, this is it, giving up. But
I've made you upset, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. If you asked me this question, let me say 3 years ago, I would never say anything. I would say, no, thank you, I'll pass. But now I can kind of talk about it because day by day, when the time passes, you kind of relieve yourself a little bit of the guilt and whatever came before you arrive here. If you asked me this question 3 years ago, I wouldn't even accept the interviews.
Where do you see yourself then in 5 years, 10 years?
Oh, well, right now, because I have my papers, so which means I can go back to Africa and come back, just to be healthy. Just to be healthy. Honestly, it's just to be healthy. Probably a lot of things going on, but just to be healthy. That's what I can ask for. Thank you very much.
Tessie there, speaking to my colleague James Cotton, who's working with our colleague Mimi Swaby, and Tessie describing a journey which included 10 days in the desert and then feeling guilty that she made it through that long journey alive when others didn't. And showing that sometimes it takes years to tell a story. I'm James Reynolds with you on OS on the BBC World Service.
This is the BBC World Service, and here's Harriet Gilbert to tell you what World Book Club will be reading.
Set on Colombia's wild Pacific coast, the story revolves around Damaris and what happens when she adopts a puppy, a substitute for the child she never had. Pilar Quintana's A Bitch is a dark, unsettling novel that explores themes of motherhood, loss, and the impact of violence on women's lives.
World Book Club from the 5th of August. In an hour, the 5th floor with Theranak Almidi.
From free haircuts to brutal killings, BBC Arabic's Sudan Lifeline radio service tells about the scope of their work 3 months into the conflict, plus the Eritrean cyclists making Africa proud in the Tour de France.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Welcome to OS with James Reynolds, live from the floor of the BBC's main newsroom in central London. The army is Israel's most revered institution. It is right at the heart of national life. All Jewish Israelis, men and women who are not Orthodox, serve at least 2 years as conscripts when they become adults. After this compulsory service, many of the male soldiers are then periodically called up to serve as reserve soldiers, sometimes for a few weeks every year. The armed forces need both conscripts and reservists in order to carry out the missions that it carries out. But more than 1,000 reservists are now warning that they may not serve in protest of the policies of Benjamin Netanyahu's nationalist government. In particular, they oppose his aim to bring the country's courts under greater direct control of Parliament, in their view, removing a vital check on the power of the government. On the programme, we will bring you the full story.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. The Russian authorities have arrested the ultra-nationalist military blogger Igor Girkin, who has been an outspoken critic of President Putin. The FSB security service had asked for him to be detained on charges of incitement to extremism. Steve Rosenberg has more details.
Igor Girkin is a pro-war ultra-nationalist, officer of the FSB, Russia's domestic security service, who has become a prominent military blogger. He's been vocal in his criticism of how the Russian authorities have been waging the war in Ukraine, and of President Putin himself. A few days ago, he called the Kremlin leader and a cowardly waste of space. In 2014, he played a key role in the fighting in Ukraine's Donbass region, a conflict engineered and orchestrated by Moscow. There, he organized and commanded pro-Russian militias.
The South African government has applied for a warrant to arrest the Russian President Vladimir Putin if he visits South Africa. The move follows a legal application by the opposition Democratic Alliance to compel the government to comply with an order from the International Criminal Court. That stipulated that Mr. Putin should be arrested in connection with the alleged abduction of children from Ukraine. On Wednesday, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa confirmed
the first Ramadan, the first Ramadan. Yes, sir. After the Ramadan, sir. Yes. April.
April 26.
Yes, after that, sir. End of the month of the April. Yes.
So May, June, 2 months. That's 3 months.
Coming 3 months. Yes, ma'am. Sir? Laman? No. Yogurt? Laban? No. No, I don't like, sir. Yes, sir. I only drink. I only bring Pepsi. Yes, sir. Sir?
Juice.
No, only Pepsi.
Because I'm going to take money from
Sorry? We have 6 Pepsi here. It's enough. It's enough for us, sir.
juice.
No, no, sir. I don't like, sir.
You like juice, man?
Only Pepsi. We have 6 can. Enough, father, sir. Sarah, oh, mama. Sim, ada. Ana, no, always drink Pepsi.
Like it,
Yeah, but sometimes Ana a chance, sir. Yes, sir. I want to drink sometimes, and I want to drink sometimes because I feel a chance. Like mama sometimes. Anak ko mama jam bagi iti israp yung in the morning I have 2 can anak israp. Anak ko, why dada? May kape hada itina small hada kote.
small.
Mama gol small hada kote. May kape ana batane.
Well, maybe 5, maybe 6, I don't know. She wasn't drinking Pepsi. She doesn't like Pepsi.
Yeah, when I was jaded here, I cannot say mama
Yes.
israp hada only hada
Yes.
laban in
Exactly.
the morning.
Yes. I don't know what happened. How come she liked it?
I see only Baba Awol israp hada 7 up.
Baba is 7 up.
Yes, sir. Then when Mama come from Hada Madam
Hey,
Muna,
hey. She maybe she tasted it, and she liked it.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Kamara anagol Mama, iti israp hada inti lasi batani maujud yani akil, yani bread or sinupi dakal batani may sirada inti israp hada without eating. Mama gula ang mahibi eating. Matuta ko ada patani ada iuan ada baning silod ada. There's only ada may ada dakal ichesa. Badi mama ko ana YDP ada. Miss, ada morning sir, and I question mama after gaad mama malhos. Ana ko hindi ka na sa Rio. Na ana may Rio. Hindi siya na ibi. Miss, ada pansin. May sir mama. Musing ada. Hindi nasim milk or something na may ibi. Because I question her every morning, mama, it's lahat ng bara. Yeah, that is not good. Empty stomach. That is cause for high percent.
Mama, she doesn't have hypertension and no sugar. But she's not eating much.
Yeah.
But now I think she will get the sugar after drinking this every day. Why she is good? Why her health is good? You know why? You know why she doesn't have the sugar and the hypertension? Because before 7 years, because she eat only little, and she doesn't eat sweet, and she doesn't drink tea, she doesn't drink coffee, she doesn't drink Pepsi, she doesn't eat so many things. That's why her. But now after drinking this Pepsi, I think she will get hypertension and sugar.
Kapalitan tatag krusan. Ayaw juga pa sugo ah. Ganyan di pangutana kang baga. Animal ka, ganyan ka di pangutana ka.
Pasnak ba? Wala naman siya nag-open liwat ko. Pursyo.
Minit ng buro ka.
Sabi ko, mangkot pa sa liwat. Drinks.
Dapat magkuanan live aning reels.
Drinks man niyang gingon. Kasi palit na siya sa ano-ano da. Kaya pilit siya punta.
Ini mau na ni?
Okay.
Ini?
Ay, natapos na to? Kato, tapos na to. Next.
Bagunin ako gipagaga.
Next na to. Natapos na to siya.
Pag-open ako.
Hindi na lagi, gaya na na. Next na. I-share now.
Ha?
I-share now.
Ayaw sa i-share.
What? Ito sa kwan. Saan ang oras ron? Sige daw, okay daw. Na, okay na siya, ga-play na.
Nakatawa kay kung nanay ba? Kalit naman siya istorya na kung magminyo daw si kuya. Halaga, kung magminyo si kuya, gabulagon mo dyan daw, 100% yun na.
Kasi magminyo, taka lang mo na siya, uy.
Halaga, kismara pa ngalan sa babae.
Kuya, magminyo, senyor na dugay-dugay.
2 months from now daw.
Taka lang siya.
Ayan, mao dyan na, iyo pa siya yung tugaan ni ate.
Taka lang siya. Sige, iyan na.
Ingon ko, bunalan, di ka kung dili na tinood ha. Siya, bunali ko. Ano ba di dyan ako? Nadlok na kay kugaoy. Susga, bahinan tang duwaga, dahil may lang ang asawa ni kuya, okay kayo. Maduro ba dyan ka sa kong kamaldita ga? Namatimpad, ba dyan kong taman-taman. Dahil, ang ako, dito siya, mukuyo sa bukid, dan si ate, si nanay, diya sa balay. Ibulag ta niya, may lang ang asawa, buutan niya.
Ano, minyo si kuya, gabangkig magani sa sasakit.
Istorya lagi si nanay og galit ako. Kabantay katong nagunong ning duha sa lingkuranan siya gatubang ko niya. Mauto nga time nag-istorya siya nako. Kisma kuno ngalan taga kaitan kuno niya. 2 months from now daw ayog saba ni ate ha. Basta nga hilo may pag-abot ni kuya nga nagbipitsig sa bagba.
Tikalo na si nanay eh.
Ingon pa jud ko. Unya dili tinuod mo nagat ka ha. Siya bunali. Ano pa yun ako? Basta ayog saba ni ate. Ana siya nako.
Si Sinta na sobra si kuya, maminyo pa.
Ako una pastilan ug matinuod naglingkod bitaw ko karon ni anak ko. Pastilan ug matinuod din si kuya maminyo. Saon na lang kay magbulag ni girly dahil ang asawa ni kuya labaw pa nako batasan kamaldita na. Alam mag-riot yun uli jud balik balay ay. Mingon jud kong ate uli na lang ko Pilipinas ay ngani ni. Ug nani ngon ani ra ba jud batasan na jud kabalo jud mo sa batasan jud.
Imposible si kuya maminyo eh. Kung naminyo pa, dugay rara.
Ambot na kay sa una mo na siya ginahagit ni tatay good na. Magminyo namin tas buhi pa ko niya. Mingon na si kuya kalas dili jud ko magminyo. Dili na ko ganahan magminyo. Ayaw na ko istoryahi ana. Mo na mag-away mo to sa landwa sa iya mamahan.
Posible kay maminyo si kuya ang kaarte ana.
Siya halaga, di siya maminyo ka, di ko ganahan mo tipo nila tinuod lang. Kay kabalo na jud ko sa ubang asawa. May lang mag-asawa siya pertimbutan na. Ate gani duphan gani nako na siya pa kada pang bagong asawa ni kuya. Baluro ba jud ka sa kumbatasan basta mahurot akong pasensya.
Atik-atik na ni nanay eh.
Ay nakag-uway kabutangan sa kong kakulba. Ako nauna dyan, naglingkod ko diri pastilan. Ako ra ba gid pamalansa.
Kung maminyo si kuya, na istorya nung tana si ate oy.
Kana dili mo kuno una-unang istorya si ate. Good, unya ra man ang istorya si ate ug kanang halata na jud kaayo.
Pero may istorya biya si ate og kanang may mga bag-ong akwan, kabalo biya siya nga di pod ipangtug-an ang kanang iyang pa istorya. Luwas lang si nanay, maong dili tug-anan. Imposible kayo nang tug-an-tugan sang nanay.
Ano pa siya ayog tug-an ni ate ha?
Kay chismosa ko na si nanay.
Dili lagi ko matugan basta kung tinuod ba guna, siya tinuod lagi. Bunalan ti kag dili na tinuod siya bunali. Mga tawa ko ng duha. Paghapak kita ni kuya sa pintuan, ani dalian na mo nga hilom duha eh. Nya ako ra bay pamalansya siyang sanina daw bi kung ako'y kuhaon niya. Na dili ko kasabot. Saan ako? Dadon kog farm dito mi mamuyo. Nya may lag ang asawa niya buotan. Kung ang asawa niya di ko kasabot, mga parehan niya nang kabaloro ba jud ka na kung maldita kay ko sa tanan.
Jaban jud ni.
Ala, adoptahan jud ako siya do. Mapareha gyud ang ate nga. Wala na ugma. Ha? Puto na lang ni trabaho tanan, wala na ugma. Salan good.
Hindi na ko si kuya maminyo eh. Karon pa nga nang gisag problema gani man na sa iyang sakit. Maminyo pa noon siya. Kung naminyo siya dugay na eh.
Ilan na siya magninyo kung tugan dyan na siya nato kay maingon pa na siya.
2018 pagod si tatay namatay. 5 years na.
Ni open magani na siya sa iyang sakit niya. Ang tanan ano niyang gugma di niya i-open na to. Posible kay nagdili na niya i-open yung gugma.
Open gani siya atong iyang minyo nga nung wala siya kaduha na daw siya mga sawa.
Ni open gyud siya atong pag-abot tay nagikan siya yuki nga unsay resulta ng istorya sa doktor. Iya magay gi-express ako nga mao ni akong sakit sar. Mao ni akong gibati. Dayon
Basing
1 week daw ko dili pa kanon sa doktor kay under observation akong tiyan.
ako ba basin ng asawa na ni kuya dati ba na mention ni nanay nice good ya. Basin na mo na ngalan sa asawa ya dati.
Kay walay kabutangan sa kong kakulba nagistorya. Ingko ala.
Basta kay na minabanggit si kuya nga wala lang ko kabal unsay term ato sa English oy.
Basta si tatay sa uno, sige na siya hagad sa ayaha nga. Pag minyo ra ba
Hindi man pud tutalak, hindi man pud tutalak. Ambot ano ayan sa ila ang divorce oy. Mo na yan guys. Basta nga ando lang man ko wa pud gaga. Wala pud ko naginung tanan sa iya nganong ngano dili ka ganahan, wala ra pud ko. Sige ra kog
Yung Jamia o inang grocery among kuya.
Ingon mo siya nga, "Girlie, you know that I'm married before?" Ana gid siya.
Dili naman na siya mistorya na ko about ayang kaninyoon kay nasakpan og guna ko na sila one time ba nag-ergo lang tatay di sa dungan niya pa rin. Muti pagkuha na ko sa mga glass nga gikan sa mga bisita ni anak siya nga. Anak si tatay pag minyo na good kay tigulang nako. Kanu sa pa man ka magminyo nya wala nako. Ilang days kuya kalas dili jud ko magminyo. Di na ko ganahan. Yan makadlong to si kuya kasabot to nga kabalo ni si Sarah kay si tatay gud istorya guni sa iya.
Pero kung may mga changes na sa balay, maingon mo gina si ate nga kuan.
Ang ako ba dili pa ni nila i-istorya sa kuha kay abi nila undawi kog Pilipinas. Inya na ni nila i-istorya og kanang abotay na ko. Pareha gud sa una gud wala man to nila istorya nga ug wala ako naabot. Moro ba ni ugali nila? Ikabalor ba ni sila dayon nga moingon ko nga igawas ko. Magawas na ko trabaho di na ko diri. Kapoy naman ko eh. Balor ba ni sila maanak ko dayon ba? Ang akong kabalakan ba unya na ni nila i-request ba abot na ako.
Very impossible kayo mga sawas kuya sa pagkaon niya lang gani, singagan niya man gani si ate. Sino man kuno palutuon niya kuno be?
Di ko muluto, bahala ka kasawa ka di bag-o. Bot ni mo do. Kabagtik nako kumulungag ninyo akong digamo. Kabalo ko anang kuya unsa na kagayow-yawan about ana yung gipakaon.
Ay di pud ko ay non po ko si kuya di ko master oy. Di na ko kabalo anang nilutoan ni ate.
Na. Sa kadaghan nga ng ingredients ilang gipang pasok ani ilang kaldero bot-bot akong digamo. Bahala ko kaon.
Very impossible kayo oy si kuya arte kayo oy.
Ambot lang wa jud ko ning tubay og ayo istorya ni nani kay basig lahion to niya og term dili adto na pud niya ti kuya. Basta niingon lang gugong nga. Sure good? Siya, akit. Ana siya. Kudayon, og dili na akit. Ako kang bunalan. Siya bunali. Ayaw lang tugan niya ate. Basta, ingon, nakaana na siya ko sa kong paglingon. Kung tinuod si kuya magminyo na. Nahinay na kita impake niya.
Boing. May nursing pa.
O kung kabalo man jud ko nga ako di kuha ni kuya kay ako na kuya nas mo plansa. So ako may makaluluoy og mahitabo man galing na maghinay na lang jud ko ingon nga. Mahita na lang magkatulong kay magawas ko. Kapoy na mo ko tinarbaho balay. Na onde na ko na. May lag og diyang asawa buutan. Na si ate gagiduphan gani na ko na.
Bahala ka dati. Ngayon siya nga well retired.
Lain medyo na ko gikapoy na biya kong tinarbaho balay pwede ko ninyo i-release. Yan na lang ko patrabaho ninyo kay bag-o na po na akong i-adjust na sa inyong batasan sa inyong asawa.
Noon tayo mga asawa si kuya ka na mga minupuson na.
Dili man minupuson kay yung asawa, yung asawa. Dili man na sila mga asawa og kanadiguang na. Ang ang lalaki, mga asawa na sila bata pa kayo. Like, anang 20 above. Di na sila mga asawa, 30 above. Ala, mamili uroy ng mga 17, 18, 19, mauroy na ilang asawahon. Sabi ito ni ato sa tatay, kuan o, katong ni ato si tatay o, kanang Saudi. Pagkakita niya sa iyang asawahon, tupo sa iya, kay iguwang naman. Ingin siya ulit tagkuwit.
Posible di maminyo si kuya oy kakuripot ana sa kwarta sakit mga nibuot niya sa mga kwan nya minyo dayon bayad anang mahal kayo very impossible kay na
May dili na matinuod ang istorya ni nanay, basta managana. Kag mubalik, gani kung gikag bakasyon, gani mahitabo, gani ng istorya.
hinay-hinay nga lang daan pangapas
Hinay
gawas
na lang dyan ko daan, hinay. Ako na ni palungon kay nana akong kuya.
ano binakan niya kubos
Wala siya ulit.
$1,000 for this costume, and we've got a bidding war between Halifax shops, which is where the Donair originated, and then Alberta shops. And so it's sort of an Atlantic versus Prairie bidding war, and they're using proxy bids so they can instantly outbid each other $5 at a time. But there's also this other war going on because the Donair was crafted for Alberta, and here in Alberta we have lettuce on our Donairs, and to the original makers of the Donair, this is sacrilege. It is blasphemous to have lettuce on the Donair. It's like pineapple on pizza. Very contentious issue.
Catherine Kurikowski, it's been fascinating to hear from you. I promise you I'm not going to be bidding because I don't have that kind of spare money lying around, but I will be interested to see who's going to win that bid for the Donna Kebab life-size costume. Catherine, reporter for Alberta today, joining us from Edmonton. Catherine was mentioning impaired vision, which is something I've been thinking about as we cover the next story. Yesterday we told you the police were combing the streets outside Berlin under the impression that there might be a female lioness on the rampage, because there have been pictures, grainy pictures showing potentially a lioness. Now it turns out that's not the case.
no time to do the balcony today, huh? There is no time to do the balcony today. Tomorrow better.
No problem tomorrow, early in the morning.
Early in the morning.
Yeah.
Your side there, early in the morning, will be very hot because the sun will be there on the other side. So you decide if you want to do now or tomorrow.
Need to use water hose. It's very dusty. I need to use hose.
Okay, let us see now. See if you want to use hose or.
Okay, sir.
It's up to you if you want to do now or tomorrow.
Check first that if ever it's too much dirty, we need to use water.
Check if you want to do now or tomorrow.
Okay.
Sleep outside, huh?
Okay, no problem.
No, sir. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared.
Just lock the doors.
Yes, sir. I'm not scared.
Yeah, to safe. Better you lock the door.
Yeah. Outside is very scary, but inside in the house, no problem.
Yeah, inside in the house.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to
Yeah.
lock. So I'll give the key on the door from inside.
Okay, sir.
The television, everything was taken.
You're not scary here in Kuwait. Mostly here is CCTV. They're not scary to harami in the house. Mostly in Kuwait, we had a
Camera.
Camera, yes. But they know that far there is no camera. Not many people. friends live with camera. Because if anyone thinks that you've come inside the house, they see the camera, they will not go. Because see, sometimes now we come to Wafra, all of us. So people they are this thief, they see the camera, he will not go inside. But if you see clear, no camera, he will go.
Mm.
And yet, of course, everyone who makes this kind of journey will have to find money, sometimes quite a lot of money. It can cost $1,000 or more to pay people smugglers to take you through the desert, to find a way on one of those dangerous boats across the Mediterranean. So
napunta na siya sa kamera. Naahak na napunta na siya sa kamera.
Huwag ka siya.
Diba? Siya ba? Mabutang ko na siya kamera.
Sayawan ko na yung camera.
Tiktokan.
Yung halaman ko di siya makatawag yan siya galit. Minion na niya ang katulong.
Namang guroy ga overtime oh, naisuga dito sa iya nga kwan oh. Hayang man saya nga gitamnan oh. Sa na oras ron, naagid man di ay. Naa.
Katanaw na itong
Oras na 1 hour 26 minutes.